Jesus Christ, what a professional outfit we have here at The Real World.
Oh, look at you, just dropping that terminology. Barely in the door, and you're saying we the real world. Sorry, go.
Tremendous. Last year, it was a crossover. This year, it's synergy. Tonight, the superhero Pantheon, Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey, and Countdown Destruction cross the streams to preview Avengers Endgame. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Real World special podcast. My name is Jerome Cuson. You can follow me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. Please go leave a 4 or 5 star review on our iTunes, Stitcher, or other podcast app page through The Real World. This will help people discover all the shows we do here. If you would like to interact with us here at the Superhero Pantheon, please follow us at Hero Pantheon or email us superheropantheon@gmail.com. I cannot do the show alone, though, as there are 3 other co-hosts to introduce. And first up is Matt Waters. You can follow him on Twitter at MattCWaters. And Matt, you will notice that I mentioned 2 of the podcasts that you host here on The Real World, both Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey and Countdown to Destruction. Matt, did you ever think that doing a podcast about The Leftovers would help you in preparation for Avengers Endgame?
I didn't until Ben made me watch every episode of The Leftovers, and then I started to get all of these memes where people were mashing up the opening title sequence with clips from Infinity War. Now, yes, I can see I have been put on the one true path. I also appreciate you pronouncing the name of the show correctly. There is that implied question mark at the end of Destruction. Yeah, I am Matt Waters. I am joined, as always, when we do Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey by Ben. Ben Phillips, how are you this time around?
I am good. Were you going to say afternoon or evening?
Yeah, I don't know. I take exception to tonight, because who knows when our listeners listen to podcasts, Jerome? Let's not assume listenership. As Jerome said, you can listen to all of our good stuff everywhere on the internet. We are now on Spotify, which is very exciting. And, you know, the best way to listen to the show is SoundCloud, of all places, because just it looks really nice with all the playlists and all the artwork. It's good stuff. But, you know, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Everyone do what you're going to do. That's us. We're Ben and Matt, but this is one podcast. We need the other half of the Superhero Pantheon, right?
We do, and the final co-host is my partner on the Superhero Pantheon. He is Brian DeBrain. He has a knack for calling things, predicting things, and on a show where we are previewing Avengers Endgame, he has to be here. You can follow him on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. And Brian, I guess you could say we're in the Endgame now, aren't we?
Yep, and we're kind of in the shallow point as well. Yes, I did predict. Yes, I did predict that Red Skull would come back, and he did come back, and now he's set loose into the Marvel Universe again, so the Red Skull is probably coming back, because he's free now, so I don't know what that means for Captain America, but yeah, I was right, and I called it, and that was my moment of glory, and I looked at my friends, and I said, I told you, you thought I was crazy, fuck you, I was right.
Now you have less friends, but you're more right.
And really, when it comes to the internet, that's all that matters.
Hell yeah.
All right, so one of the things that we need to do right now is we need to update our Marvel listings. Last year, one of the things that we did on this podcast was we discussed the rankings of the Marvel films, and I was yelled at about my ranking of Iron Man 3. I have a feeling it's only going to get worse this year, but I believe we have a unanimous number 1 choice. Ben Phillips, let's go to you since you know how to do spreadsheets.
I do. So, we're going to go from bottom to top. So, in last place, we have Thor the Dark World, which has no change over last year. So, we have voted Thor the Dark World the worst MCU movie 2 years in a row. Down 1 space in 17th, we have Iron Man 2. Just above Incredible Hulk, we have Thor, which has no change over last year. It stayed in its same position. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp was a new entry, which was a movie that wasn't out when we did the ranking last year. So, I feel like we should probably touch on our thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp in brief.
Shitty villain. That's what really takes it down. I mean, what else is there to say? The comedy's there. Paul Rudd's awesome. You know, everyone is awesome. Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas. But once you get to the villain, and then the stakes are not even that high when it comes to the villain, it's just filler to get to the dusting.
There are parts of Ant-Man and the Wasp that I think I enjoyed more than the first Ant-Man, but just like the first one, ultimately, I think it's disposable. And that's fine. I mean, that's the purpose that it serves, but it's not going to go very high in these rankings.
Yeah. Not to cannibalize our own content, because Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey will be back very, very soon with a review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. But one of the big things we talked about, how it felt like there didn't even need to be a villain as such. Like, there's something interesting there with the Ghost character if you give it more. And then Walton Goggins is an amazing actor, but there's not enough there for him either. And I think they needed to pick one or the other because they just don't complement and take time away from each other. And yeah, there's a lot of really fun moments. It's just no enthusiasm for it is my biggest knock against it.
I thought it was better than Ant-Man, but I do think that it lacks it gains benefit from being like a cohesive movie told from one person's point of view, in terms of like they actually got a director in who didn't quit the project about 6 months before they were due to shoot. But it lacks some of the teeth that some of the other Marvel movies had, especially coming out around this period of time, where I think between Doctor Strange and Infinity War, like you could argue that every single movie was getting better and better as they're going along, and then this didn't. Right, so in 16th we have Ant-Man, which has dropped 2 places. So in 15th place we have Doctor Strange, which has no change over last year.
And then fun fact though, it is the only movie we have in the exact same place, all 4 of us.
In 14th place, up 2 places on last year, we have Avengers Age of Ultron.
What a great movie that is very deeply flawed.
Moving on, in 13th place, with no change over last year, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. In 12th, we have our second new entry with Captain Marvel, which only came out about a month ago.
So I think that this is very appropriate. I think Captain Marvel, the way I ranked it, was like right in the middle, and I think that's exactly how I feel about it. I think it's better than a lot of your worst MCU movies and maybe some of the lesser impact movies. But on the other hand, it is a clear step down from some of the better MCU movies that we're going to be getting to in just a couple minutes. So I think it's going to be one of those movies that I think people will always have like right in the middle, bridging between the first half and the second half, which is very fitting because that is the role that Captain Marvel is playing in the MCU.
No area of my rankings that I struggle with more than like 9 through about 12 or 13, as Ben will know, because I kept saying, hey, can you move this one just 1 for me? And Captain Marvel especially might have been the hardest one for me to rank. I think I've had it as high as with like 9 or 10, like within the top 10 for sure. And then I've had it a lot lower, and just there are some aspects about it where I want to be super enthusiastic about it, and like some of the things it did, like I think the character is fucking great, and bringing her into the that's what I ultimately decided on, is walking away from that movie, I'd less like that movie objectively than I am enthusiastic for Carol Danvers to join the MCU and see what happens going forward with this character, because I think they nailed that. But the movie, it's so safe. It's like the safest movie they've done in a long time in terms it's not like trying anything special beyond Ben Mendelsohn's twist reveal, which is the best thing in the movie.
That's definitely the best thing in the movie. And for me, it's definitely better than like Iron Man 2 and Thor and all that, because it definitely has like fan service moments, which it kind of needed because there's all these gaps you have to fill leading into Endgame and all that kind of thing. So that works, but, you know, I have problems with the script, and then the fact that we don't even know Young-Rog's name until, like, 2/3 into the movie, which really kind of confuses me because it kind of jumps into it. It kind of feels like it takes place out of sequence a little bit, and I kind of mentioned that on the podcast. But other than that, we got a great female lead, great characters, and the moment they go, like, a lot of MCU movies go to barns, right? And this definitely went to a barn or a farm or whatever and had that emotional moment, and that was definitely, like, the best part of the movie. And that once they get to the farm and she sees her best friend, that's when the movie kind of kicks into gear for me. So in terms of that, I like it a lot, and it's better than a lot of the second half of the list. So it's definitely in the middle, and it's definitely got some fan service moments that, you know, I marked out for like everyone else did.
Quote unquote best friend, yeah.
And a tease for later, we might be talking about a farm just a little bit later in the burning question.
Right, so slap down in the middle probably speaks more to the split opinion on this movie that we have across the two podcasts. In 11th place, we have the best Iron Man movie, Iron Man 3.
Yeah. Which, since our last podcast together as a crossover, has been inducted very nicely into the superhero pantheon. We're very proud of you for coming over to the side of right and acknowledging that film as a masterpiece that should be talked about in the annals of the other great superhero movies of all time.
All I'm going to say is I was looking at IMDb, Avengers Infinity War, as I was putting the notes together for that podcast. The Collector's death is not even mentioned on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, by the logic of our bet last year, shouldn't we have won?
See, here's the thing, though. I crunched some numbers also. We have, so we each made 6 picks of people that were going to die in that movie. We had 3 that were confirmed to be alive, 2 that fully actually really died, and then 1 unknown, and none that were dusted. You had 2 alive, 1 confirmed definitely dead, 2 dusted, and 1 unknown. We know the dustings are going to get reversed, so I say we win with our 2 actual deaths, but whatever, we tied.
But we said at the end of Infinity War,
I know what
dead.
we said.
And dusting is dead. They are dead.
They could be sat in the Soul Stone, for all we know.
Vision died twice. Does that mean 2 points?
No.
Look, Iron Man 3 is one of those movies that is not nearly as smart as it thinks it is. And the fact that Shane Black kind of went to do Predators and basically did the same thing. He tried to make a movie that was smart and it ended up being really dumb. I think that's kind of been Shane Black's MO when he's gone to these big genre franchises.
Because Predator
like
is,
the
of
kid.
course, a cerebral franchise. Sorry, carry on.
I like the kid. I like the stuff when he's carrying the Iron Man suit in the cold. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
But
Brian gets it. No, stop talking. Brian gets it.
Look, that's fine. But once you get to the villain, and then I'm thinking like at the end, like how come he doesn't call for help from like the Shield members? Like that was the first big thing I was thinking of post like all these Avengers movies. Why don't they call for help? Ragnarok kind of like picked up on that, and like why don't the other Avengers help each other out in certain adventures? Yeah. So they kind of got to that point. But for me, I was just thinking at the end, like you have all these Iron Man suits. You can't just make a phone call and call like Fury right now and get Captain America over here to help you out. And then,
he had Colonel James Rhodes. What more backup do you need?
Well, he's a Skrull, so.
Okay, so I'm just going to lay out some maths here. So I had Iron Man 3 in the same place I did, regardless of any new entries that
I'm
came
really
afterwards.
proud of how much time we're putting into Iron Man 3 just to keep the tradition going.
The person that maintained Iron Man 3 in the position that it was Brian, who bumped up 3 spots over his list from last year.
Excellent.
So Brian is to thank for Iron Man 3 being right in the middle of this year, and I just want to give him a round of applause for...
Thank you. I watched some YouTube videos to kind of convince me of that ranking, but it's not going to convince me to go in the top 10.
Definitely wasn't us. Okay, right, Ben, we're getting into the YouTube game when we finish this podcast.
Right, number 10, we have Captain America the First Avenger. No change over last year, which is fine. I do think it's better than number 9, which is Iron Man, which has actually fallen a spot since last year. So in number 8, we have Spider-Man Homecoming, which is down 1 place from last year. But I feel like the only one person that should talk about this movie is Matthew Waters.
Look, eventually I will let it go, but that day is not today. And I've bumped it down slightly. I'm making progress. I'm overcoming my problem. I have it a full 4 spaces higher than anyone else does.
But Matthew, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse exists.
Yeah, it sure does. But that's not in the MCU, so...
I think that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the fact that this is going on at the same time, I almost wonder if it makes Spider-Man Homecoming and the upcoming Spider-Man movie feel just a little bit worse, because Spider-Verse was so fresh and so different from anything that we've seen. And given how many times we have seen the Spider-Man character in the movies, the fact that Spider-Verse exists seems to make a lot of other comic book movies feel a little bit not obsolete, but they just feel very samey and kind of reductive in some ways. But I think Spider-Verse is one of those, and this is not an MCU movie again, but it just feels like Spider-Verse just completely changed the game. And I would really love to see either more animated movies or see comic book movies kind of expand into this realm where they could be so many more different things and, have different ideas.
Right, 7, Thor Ragnarok, up 2 places year on year. Number 6, Captain America Winter Soldier, no change year on year. Number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy, no change year on year. Number 4, Avengers Infinity War, our last new entry on the list before we get to the top 3.
I'm stunned that this didn't collapse under the weight of everything it had to be juggling. It kept so many plates spinning in the air. The size of the cast, the hype, the fact that the trailers gave away a shockingly little about it. Thanos has been teased and teased and teased and teased, and he actually gets to do something. I mean, I'm not counting his role in Guardians, and he was fucking great. And yeah, they just really nailed it, and it's a surprising. The number of like character moments in it really blew me away. Like, it wasn't just huge fight scenes, and that there were less fight scenes than I thought there would be. But there's just loads of fun little moments of people meeting for the first time or re-meeting, and every time Cap steps out of the shadows with that beard, I get physically erect. Who else wants to talk about Infinity War?
I think this reminds me a lot of a Game of Thrones episode, the best Game of Thrones episodes, because I think what those episodes do is it's people in rooms talking, and there's just enough action to keep things palatable. The thing that impressed me so much about this movie is, in watching it again, it is the fastest 2.5 hours that I've ever seen. And how they were able to do that is a miracle. I think this movie, again, it's not perfect in every conceivable way, but they kept the plot very simple. Again, the pacing was spectacular, and I was just in it for the whole ride, even on rewatching it. There was never a dull moment, and that's why I've seen some people complain about the 3-hour and 2-minute runtime, and I'm like, based on what I saw in Avengers Infinity War, they earned the right to do a movie that long because of how good Infinity War was.
Yeah, the first 30 minutes of Infinity War are probably the best 30 minutes combined, like back-to-back, in the whole MCU. Like, that 30-minute stretch from the beginning all the way up to the Guardians of the ship, it's like the funnest 30 minutes you can start a movie to, and then it just sets the table. Everything is right off the bat, and you got, Thanos destroying Hulk right off the bat really kind of sets the tone, right? So right from there, so it's like a whole new ball game, and this is a villain that you can't just take for granted, and it's not like watching Ant-Man 2 where the villain is just completely nothing, or like most of the MCU movies, but they finally gave, Thanos, this pathos that he deserves.
Right. So in third place, down 2 spots from last year, we have Captain America's Civil War. I think the only thing that caused that is that we have a new number 1 this year, rather than like any growing anti-sentiment to Civil War.
Yeah, I think Avengers 1 and Captain America and Civil War were tied last year, and we just put Civil War at 1. I don't remember, but they were very, very close, I remember. But
we have to give props to our new number 1. Up 2 places in the last year, we have Black Panther.
I think one of the things that impressed me so much was the cultural impact. From a domestic standpoint, this movie made more money than Avengers Infinity War. This got Marvel its first 3 Academy Awards, and it was in legitimate conversation for the Best Picture award. I mean, there were people that were actively talking about voting for it. And I think that all speaks to the legacy of this movie and just what Ryan Coogler was able to do from a visual standpoint. And this movie is just so impressive in my mind. I didn't feel comfortable putting it number 1 because it had only been out like 2 months when we recorded this podcast last year, but having seen it again and really rewatching a lot of the movies that are in the top 10, I feel very confident in saying that this is the best movie that the MCU has made, and this is probably the best movie the MCU will ever make, I think.
Black Panther really gives you this emotional kind of kick, you know what I mean? Like, I never got so emotional watching an MCU movie, and so watching Black Panther, especially that first time in the theater, and then just experiencing with a totally different crowd, like this crowd, and like probably had never seen an MCU movie, because when they showed a clip of Black Panther, his dad dying, and from Civil War, I heard gasps in the audience as if they'd never seen that before, and I was just blown away at the whole like different kind of audience that this movie drew in, the legacy and the online memes, and you see the kids at school doing the Wakanda Forever thing with their teachers, like that kind of shit kind of transcends everything, you know what I mean, into this whole different world where it's just like it's affecting people on a personal level. It's giving, kids of color like this idea that not just superheroes are just white people, you know what I mean? Like we're kind of evolving from that, but this really emphasized that, and it really, it's cool to see a kid just look up and see like, hey, I can be like that too. I see the same color as that guy. I can relate to that. So in terms of that, it really changed the game, and like it was a cultural phenomenon. And even a year after, it was still like people, with the Oscars and everything, it felt the night at the Oscars was this great moment. And then even to hear Kevin Feige get nominated under Best Picture, producer Kevin Feige, like I thought I would never hear that in my life, but here we are.
That is our list of the updated MCU rankings, and after that segment that went way longer than I thought it would, let's discuss any of the comic origins. This is something that Ben Phillips does as part of Ben and Matt's Marvelous Journey. Ben, I don't know if you have a whole lot to say about this, but one of the things that we can talk about, obviously, is the fact that the quantum realm was really introduced in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and that is supposedly going to play a huge role in Endgame. And we also have the introduction of Captain Marvel and whatever she is going to bring into Avengers Endgame. So, Ben, is there anything from a comic book standpoint that we should be watching out for in Endgame?
So Marvel, every year they put out a bunch of comics around the time a movie comes out to kind of give you a taste of what's going to be coming up. I read all 10 issues of those today to see if there was anything of interest to talk about. Some of them are just kind of random tie-ins. I think there's one that explains the origin of Stormbreaker, which we've already seen. There's one that does the backstory of Thanos and Gamora, which again we've already seen. I think that the most interesting ones really are, there are 3 stories that I read, which were a story called Endgame in Avengers 71, a story called The Gatherer Sagas in Avengers 343, and Avengers Forever in Avengers Forever #1, which all feature time travel or meeting alternate versions of the Avengers, which the fact that they've pumped so many of these in, I think, seems to confirm stuff like the quantum realm, time jumping, that is being very heavily hinted at by a lot of people. And I do think there's going to be a hell of a lot of time travel in this movie. And then the other interesting part is that they gave us New Avengers number 30, which is the origin of Ronin, which is probably going to be Hawkeye's new codename for this movie.
You were also telling me that there is a scene in one of these involving Xandar, which Thanos got at the beginning of Infinity War, he already has the Power Stone, and he destroyed Xandar to get it. I think you said one of these features like that basically happening.
Yeah, it says it's Nebula destroying Xandar, but it's all part of like her introduction and kind of like her backstory in relation to Thanos. So it might be that it's already happened and they've adapted it and they're just kind of shoehorning this to here, or hinting at Nebula, because in the comics, Nebula is the person that gets the Infinity Gauntlet off Thanos. So it could be hinting at like her importance to this movie. Again, these are so kind of like guess in the dark, because Marvel Comics is a different entity to the film side. But I do think there's food for thought in what stories they pick.
But as soon as you said that, I thought, okay, if they're doing time travel and like, we never actually saw him go get the Power Stone, because who gives a fuck about Xandar? If that's in that comic, I can just see it's making me think they're going to go to the moment Thanos got each and every one of these stones for the first time to try and stop him, and rather than have Nebula be the one to destroy Xandar, like reverse it and have her like being like fighting valiantly to stop Thanos from getting that Power Stone and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's that footage that's gone around of them recreating the first Avengers movie and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe they do it. Maybe they don't.
I think the other interesting part is there are no tie-ins to Young Avengers, which is the other big rumor that's been going around, especially with the teaser of Hawkeye training a small girl to shoot an arrow. Everyone's been saying, oh my god, they're going to do Kate Bishop, but there's no Young Avengers here, so we might be disappointed that we don't see any teen Avengers teams in this movie.
Well, it's also worth noting, as you're saying that there is one cast member that is very prominent, whose role that we have no idea about, and that is Catherine Langford. And there have been some rumors that she was going to play Ant-Man's daughter, but she is in this movie, and she is a big deal because of the fact that she was on this huge Netflix series. So I have a feeling that she is also going to play a prominent role in this movie.
And I would hope they wouldn't just like show their hand by doing Young Avengers, like because all those other ones you've said, those are like generic enough that it doesn't give anything away. So maybe they are going to do it, but they're just not doing the reprint so they don't tip their hand.
Look, all I want in life is to have Bruce Banner with a whiteboard or a blackboard like Dr. Emmett Brown in Back to the Future 2, screaming about time travel and all that stuff. That's all I want in this movie.
Well, maybe you'll get it. The trailers allegedly use the first 20 minutes, so maybe the rest is just in real time, him drawing every equation. We can only hope.
Yeah, everyone's been saying there's a lot of hair colour changes going on. Like Black Widow has her blonde and red hair in these first scenes, and there's no real reason for her to dye her hair back to red unless she's going to a point where she's going to need red hair to blend in.
But Hawkeye gets to keep his mohawk? Come on, man. Well, something's going on here.
Jeremy Renner, man, he could do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, he can.
All right, so we have talked about some of the comic book origins. Now we come to the big moment. And Brian, I'm going to have you explain the rules of our pool this year, since there have been some slight changes from last year.
Okay, this is the Endgame pool. All right, it's the superhero Pantheon versus Ben and Matt's Marvelous Journey. All right, so each team will draft a team of 3. Each side can pick 3 people to die or be resurrected. So the rule is no one who was dusted can be picked as someone to be resurrected. Since the superhero Pantheon, us, picked first last year, you guys get to pick first, and we get picks 2 and 3, and then we'll go from there.
All right, so before we get to the draft, though, we have to reveal the bets. Would you guys, if you win, and that is a big if, what do we have to do?
I kind of want to hear yours first because I don't know how harsh to make it.
Okay, so Brian and I have really thought about this very seriously over the last year.
Right.
I told Brian my idea about 6 months ago, right, Brian?
Just about.
Since you guys love Iron Man 3 so much, it is a Christmas movie, correct? It takes place during Christmas.
It does.
Right?
Are we going to watch Shazam?
So what you guys are going to do when we win is you are going to review a Hallmark holiday movie, and you are going to review it using the standards of the superhero Pantheon. However, it exists outside the superhero Pantheon.
Okay.
You cannot put it into the Pantheon. You cannot put it in the pile of shame.
The first thing I was going to do is put it into the Pantheon.
I knew you were going to do this, so this exists outside the continuity, but you are going to evaluate a holiday Hallmark movie of our choice.
Just the one?
Yes, just the one.
Okay. Well then, when we win, you will be reviewing the original Power Rangers movie from the 1990s, and I don't know if it has to go in the Pantheon this time. I guess you can review it honestly, but you will do it. And you're going to have a great time. It's more phenomenal. Yeah, more phenomenal. See, it's not even a word. I can't even say it.
The funny thing is that I believe we were going to eventually get to that movie anyway.
All right, then you have to put it in the Pantheon. There you go.
Look, we are not putting the Power Rangers into the Pantheon.
A man
would you have
jumps out
done,
of a plane on a surfboard, like skyboarding. That's in the Pantheon.
Would you have reviewed Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, as well?
No one would have.
I mean, we probably would have. Okay, what we will do is we will review the 3 Power Rangers movies.
Good.
There's 3?
There's 3, baby doll. There's 3.
Okay.
One of them is only one of them is canon, though.
That's true.
Oh, now we're going to get into a debate about Power Rangers canon.
Yes, welcome to our new podcast. All right, so to be clear, 3 picks each. Someone who dies, who is confirmed to be alive by the wonderful posters, or someone who died but wasn't turned to dust to come back alive. Because it's 3 each, we could have a tie, so we've said that... Is it worldwide or domestic box office?
Worldwide.
Worldwide.
I would like to point out, I did peg it exactly last year with the domestic when I said that Black Panther would outgross Infinity War, but Infinity War would take it worldwide.
Why I feel good about the tiebreaker. Yes, so we will each make a guess at the worldwide box office for the movie in the event of a tie.
Okay, and so the movie is opening on the same day worldwide everywhere except China. China, it opens up 2 days early. So are we considering from April 24th until that Sunday?
Sure.
All right, let's hear your first pick.
So, eligible, we in the alive category, based on these posters and whatnot. Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Rocket Raccoon, or just Rocket, War Machine, Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, Nebula, Wong, Happy Hogan, Pepper Potts, Okoye, Valkyrie, and Thanos, Dead but Not Dusted, Gamora, Loki, Vision, and Heimdall. Those are the people you can pick from for this. And with our first pick, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is definitely going to happen. James Gunn is back. Woo, woo, woo. Gamora has to come back. You can't do Guardians without Gamora. Even if he does write her terribly and give her the worst stuff, she's necessary for the team. So our first pick, Gamora, coming back to life.
All right, so with us getting these next 2 picks, I think that there's a lot of different directions we can go in. Brian, I'm not going to lie. I thought they were going to take Thanos first. So with your permission, I'm just going to say we are taking Thanos for our first pick.
I don't know, man. I can't see him dying. How do you kill a god?
They killed Loki. They killed Heimdall.
That's true. But I feel like Cap is a safer pick, even though that kind of contradicts my Skrull theory.
All right, well, we have 2 picks, so how about we take Thanos and Captain America? Somebody from the Avengers has to sacrifice themselves and go, so we are saying Captain America.
Okay. So are we picking twice, or are we just doing 1-1-1 now?
Now it's 1-1-1-1.
Okay. Well then, Ben, are you hovering over the one you would like to be second?
Yes.
Yes, okay. With our second pick, we would, as much as it breaks my heart, Nebula must die, I'm afraid. I'm stunned she's lived through Infinity War. I feel she is having her final confrontation with Thanos, but I feel she is not long for this world. And, Nebula. So the sisters are our first two picks.
I think it's really interesting that you say that, because as Brian and I were kind of hashing this out, we thought you were going to take Thanos first. So one of the conversations that we were having was, because one of the things James Gunn said is that there would be a slightly reconstituted team for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and perhaps he's lying, but perhaps he's not. So what we were thinking was, is Nebula going to be added to the team and Gamora die, or is Gamora going to come back and Nebula's there? So we were having a lot of issues with that, but you have alleviated those concerns because you have taken the two people that we were in conflict about. So now, Brian, what would you like to do for our third and final pick?
Well, if they're going to save the Infinity Stones, I guess that means they're going to save Vision. Theoretically, they have to.
I am very conflicted about this. I'm either between this or Thor dying, but we don't have a resurrection, and based on the fact, so I'm gonna use some logic here. So there is going to be a Disney Plus show that features Scarlet Witch and Vision. Hypothetically, this show could take place before Infinity War if they really wanted to, but I don't know if they're actually going to do that. So you feel very confident about this. You've said this. So Brian, we will go with you. So make it official.
We're going with Vision. And even though he died twice in the last movie, it could mean that he's just coming back twice as hard.
Okay. Well then.
Do we want? We can talk this openly now.
Yeah,
really.
we can. Everyone's available. So we made a ranking between ourselves of most to least likely, and there are some very obvious people that will definitely not die. Captain Marvel would have been a hell of a prediction. So we actually had Thanos as our sixth most likely, so our last possible pick if you took our top three. So I guess it's between Loki, who's also getting a TV show, and Hawkeye.
Loki's return would probably be a final reveal of the show.
Yeah.
So the other one feels like the cruelest thing they could do.
Yeah, I really don't want Hawkeye to die because...
No, but the thing is, if we say his whole family gets dusted and that's why he becomes Ronin, then there is a tragic beauty to killing him off to bring back his family.
I know, but give this guy a break, man. I mean, we're going to pick Hawkeye, but it pains me, and I really wish you had gone with Thor so we could have Vision, because that was going to be our next pick.
Because my only thing about Vision is, and I want to lay this up now, is we are saying that a character played by Paul Bettany would count as a return, because I don't think Vision coming back will be the same Vision that died.
Sure. He's not quite right now, or something like that.
Yeah,
I think that would still count though.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, there you go then. Hawkeye is our third pick. Much as it breaks my heart, Gamora, Nebula, and Hawkeye versus Thanos, Captain America, and Vision.
Are we all in agreement that Captain America is 100% going to die? I know you did not draft him, but where did you guys rank?
He was not.
We have another theory which we'll mention in the section where we talk about these things.
Okay, fair enough. And Tony Stark did not even come up, even though it has been teased heavily that he was going to die in Infinity War. So none of us think that there's any chance of Tony Stark dying either.
I think there's a chance almost everyone on this list dies. We have a list of people who we think are definitely safe, but we have a much larger group of people who it's maybe. They could do anything, but my instinct is no. I think both Cap and Tony are not going to die. As much as a year ago, I would have said one or both have to die.
I just want to say, Matt had Pepper in Unknown, and the fact that we got all this pregnancy hinting, I just want to say, this movie is not Game of Thrones, Matt. They're not going to kill the pregnant lady off.
Look, I've been doing too much of the wheel breakers. I just can't help but predict these kinds of death.
Oh, I went in a really dark direction, and I was saying, I asked Brian this in DMs. I asked, what if Pepper was pregnant and the baby was dusted?
So just fully doing the leftovers. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, went full leftovers there. Yes. I can't imagine a Disney movie doing that, but that would be ballsy.
Yeah.
Does it end with Pepper in a spaceship wearing the rescue suit, and then she just goes backward into the vacuum of space, but we don't know whether or not she sabotaged the
See, even discussing the finale of The Leftovers sounds silly. So I guess we need to make our box office predictions in the event that we tie.
We write them down and then and then send them over so that they're asserted rather than anyone changing anything.
Okay, we will handle that off air.
Okay.
Anyway, so for the burning questions, I'm going to take turns as best as I can for who goes first and whatnot. So, all right, Brian, first up. Are you excited for a fight on a farm?
Is it going to be a fight, really? I don't know. We'll see. It's usually them talking, get depressing, and talking about their feelings and, getting all emotional. So we'll see if there's a fight on the farm, but I am excited for a farm in this movie.
Ben, are you excited for a fight on the farm?
If there's a fight on a farm, I just like the idea of them just fully recreating the scene from Age of Ultron because they've gone back in time to that point. And so we get the scene where Cap rips the block of wood in half again.
Oh, be still. Can I get him ripping the block of wood in half, pulling the helicopter down, and first emerging from the tank? Just all in one movie. Oh my god. They better not have a fight on this farm. This farm needs to remain precious and pure, is all I will say.
I mean, there is a superhero trope that we've seen in many, many movies at this point, at least 3 of which we've seen in the MCU, but there are others as well. It would be about time if we had a fight on one of these farms because Lord knows the trope needs to be destroyed and sent to a farm, perhaps. All right, let's go with Ben first on this one. Ben, is there a chance anyone who was dusted doesn't return?
No.
Matt?
Yeah, it's got to be all or nothing. I don't think they get to pick.
And Brian?
All the dusty people are coming back. It's just the way it's got to be.
Now, if James Gunn had not returned, I wonder if they would have just pretended that Drax just doesn't come back. I almost wonder if they would have done that. But as we know, Matt, as you very well know, Batista always gets what he wants.
He's always coming back.
All right, question 3. I'm going to go to Matt first on this one. I actually could go to Brian on this one, but I want to hear from the other two first. Is anyone in this movie going to be a Skrull?
I will say potentially, but we won't find that out within this movie.
I don't think so. Just because of the major change they made in Captain Marvel, I don't think that there is the finesse to have them be a sympathetic race in Captain Marvel and then turn them around into a villainous race in the space of one movie.
Yeah, there's so much at stake here already. I just think it would just be piling on to what is already an enormous movie, and I think you get into the ramifications of, this person was never really who they said they were later.
I agree with you, too. I definitely feel as though there's a lot to this movie already, and the fact that they very clearly signaled the fact that the Skrulls were not all bad, at least. I don't think you can really just come back and do this. And plus, I don't know how confident Marvel is in the audience about understanding shapeshifting and the Skrull, because there was a lot of signaling in the movie to make it very clear in the scene in Captain Marvel with the old woman. Like, they made it so obvious that even a 6-year-old could identify it. So their confidence in the audience might not be there either. And that's the other reason that I'm going to say that nobody is a Skrull. But Brian, look, we have to give Brian his props. He was right about Red Skull. He has a knack for making predictions. So we have to let him make his predictions, because if he's right, then he gets to gloat it over us again. Brian, is anyone in this movie going to be a Skrull?
I got 2 choices. One, obviously, is Captain America. I've been saying that forever. And I think the whole point of the Skrulls being baby faces in Captain America is like this red herring to just fool everyone into thinking, they're not going to do Secret Wars. They're not going to do it. Now, I mean, to kind of get that off your mind, now they're probably going to do Secret Wars because you don't expect it. Kind of the way I see it, Captain America was not himself in Infinity War. That beard was a little off. He wasn't his usual self, and that's probably because of Civil War and those events, but it didn't feel like the same Captain America to me, and even though he's in the movie for 10 minutes, it just didn't feel right, and he still seems kind of off, and I just feel like he's a Skrull, and then he got replaced like sometime after Civil War. My other possibility, I kind of mentioned earlier, is Rhodey. That would explain maybe like the changing of the actor too. That would kind of maybe explain that part a little bit. But I've seen I went on a rabbit hole on some weird YouTube videos on conspiracy theories about the Skrulls and whatever, and it would seem like a good candidate because he's close. He gets close to Tony. He's Tony's best friend. It would be the ultimate betrayal, but to what end? I don't know. And we can't just assume all the Skrulls are good because we had a rogue Kree in Guardians of the Galaxy, Kree Warlord. So why can't there be a rogue Skrull doing bad stuff?
Yeah, and they did mention some of them are not, they're splintered, so they don't have like a unified allegiance. They're just different groups of people, as it were. So it's not that they can't. I'm sure they will do a movie where the Skrulls are bad. It's just, I think another thing is this was filmed before Captain Marvel, and maybe Captain Marvel took the look of the Skrulls from what they were working on for Endgame. But to me, it's like they had all this banked already, and then the Skrulls came after, so I just don't see it happening. But, maybe down the line we'll get this person was actually a Skrull.
It is worth pointing out that I believe they did some reshoots after Captain Marvel, so I'm not saying that Brian is right, but I am saying that there is at least a greater possibility. And let's move on to the next one. I'm going to go back to Brian for this one. Brian, will there be a post-credit sequence?
Yes, it's either going to be a Skrull reveal or it's going to be the return of Red Skull, because he's alive. He's free. People don't realize that the Soul Stone set him free. He's out and about, so he's a possibility for another villain. Does that mean Captain America gets another movie? I don't know. I put him in the death list anyway, so we'll see.
Yeah, I was going to say you are hurting
he's
yourself.
Free, man.
There.
I'm just thinking he's free out there, and I don't know. Maybe we can also kind of cut back, because I don't know if you guys noticed this, but in Ant-Man 2, when they go into the quantum realm, there is a city in the background for like a split second, right? So maybe that's another tie-in. I also have this theory that maybe the Fantastic Four, started in the 70s, accessed the quantum realm, and ended up in a time vortex and came out in 2019.
I think there's a distinct possibility, even if it's not actors or anything. I just have this feeling that they're going to find a way to tease either Fantastic Four or the X-Men in the post-credit sequence. That just seems too logical for them to do, and that's kind of where my guess is. Ben, what do you think?
To just say, I think the city in the background probably was reference to the microverse, or there is a city within the quantum realm, which if you shrink down small enough, it's where Wasp ended up for years and years and years. They might be doing something with that. I'm not 100% sure. As for the post-credit sequence of this movie, I think either they're going to do a kind of epilogue type thing, because if this movie is going to be the end of the Infinity Saga, as they're calling it, I think it's going to be quite close-ended, or they have to tease something. And whilst Fox seems the obvious choice, I think if they do it, they're going to do a villain rather than heroes. So it might be a Galactus tease, it might be a Kang tease, an Annihilus tease, or a Doom tease. They seem the most the people who could take over after Thanos as a villain. But yes, there will be a post-credit scene, but I can't see it being anything more than a nice happy epilogue.
So I just want to lend some credence to what Ben talked about with Doctor Doom, because there is apparently a Doctor Doom project that has been in the works from Noah Hawley, who has been the showrunner and producer for such television shows as Fargo and Legion. And apparently that is a project that still may happen even in this new world, which 20th Century Fox is owned by Disney. So the Doctor Doom thing is not totally out of bounds, Ben. So just to lend you some support there. And Matt, what do you think the post-credit sequence is going to be?
Well, the question was, will there be one? And I figure, to be the odd one out, I'm just going to say, no, there won't be. I hear Kevin Feige hates them. He wants to get away from them. And this would be his opportunity to do it. We've ended this sort of run of films. Let's just end this. Maybe a still image of them together or something like that. I think if there is one, it won't be any, as big of an opportunity as it is to do a big flaming 4 in the sky, or to show the Xavier Institute, or anything like that. Hell, Ghost Rider. I don't know. I don't think they're going to do this. I think this needs to be its own thing. And, they don't actually... I don't think they have a movie next year, unless Black Widow gets made really, really quickly. I think they're looking at taking a 1-year breather, and I think it's a good time to just sort of, rest for a while.
I just don't think there's a chance in hell that because the Disney machine, the way it is right now, they don't have a Star Wars movie next year. They have to have 2 or 3 Marvel movies next year.
Well, at the moment, there's only 2 spaces, and the thing is, the May release date that they've had pegged for so long was going to be Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and that hasn't happened now. So, and then they've got a November release date. So the only there are the 3 movies that we know are going into production fairly soon are Black Widow, Eternals, and Shang-Chi. And I can't see any of those being the big May tentpole. Maybe Black Widow just about makes it in as a May tentpole, but they both seem more like November movies, like your Thor Ragnaroks, your Doctor Stranges.
I don't know.
It feels weird, and it feels like they might have to abandon May just based on the fact that these movies haven't started shooting yet.
No, and Black Widow, I think, is the only one that has a chance of being done in less than a year, because the reasons. But yeah, as I was saying, if they do one, I think it's going to be something small and character based and something funny, rather than oh god, Thanos turns around in a chair.
Right. Okay. So I think we all agree there's going to be a post-credit sequence, but this perhaps may be the last one. All right. So, Ben, I'm going to go to you for this one. Will this be the top grossing movie in the year 2019?
Oh,
There's so many movies this year.
yeah, Disney have an insane year. There are 5 movies that Disney are releasing that could hit 2 billion. Captain Marvel's already over exceeded expectations. Really, I think it comes down to 3 movies. It's either going to be Endgame, it's either going to be Star Wars 9, or it's going to be Lion King.
Not Toy Story, not Frozen.
I just think there's a lower ceiling. Like Frozen did do 1.3 billion when it first came out, but I just think Lion King did 1 billion when it came out in the 90s, pretty much. I think if you look at its record, it's just missed billion by about by 40 million. It missed it. I think in 2019 with that cast and as much money as Jungle Book made, I think Lion King is going to be huge. Last Jedi obviously dipped a little bit from Force Awakens, but this is the end. This is the end of the Skywalker saga, and third movies tend to do better than the first and the second one if you look at these kind of trends. Like Deathly Hallows is the highest grossing Harry Potter movie, Return of the King is the highest grossing Lord of the Ring movie, but then that also goes for Endgame as well. And Endgame, oh God, I do think all 3 of them will hit 2 billion, and my gut probably says that it might be Endgame that ends up number 1 of the year, but it's going to be close.
Matt?
Yeah, I feel whatever it is going to be owned by Disney. I mean, Detective Pikachu, there's some hype there, but I don't see it doing 2 billion. That Fast and Furious spin-off, again, I know some of those movies have, I think the last one made like 1.5 billion, which it has no business making. So, those are big, but like, I don't know, maybe some of your Endgame audience are pissed off that Infinity War ended in such a to-be-continued fashion, but it's a fucking Marvel movie, and like the hype is enormous, and to me it's this or it's Star Wars, and I think it's probably this, because I mean enough people got pissed off about episode 8 to make Solo only make 383 million. So Endgame, I guess, but it's what a year for Disney. Like, they are just going to own everything soon.
They apparently are going to own 35 to 40% of the box office. Before I get to Brian, I think you guys talking about The Lion King is interesting because while I think there is a possibility, I also think there is a significant backlash to some of these live-action Disney movies, and I almost wonder if people are going to start taking a wait-and-see attitude, because I know the movie Dumbo, it did open to $45 million, which on the surface it looks really good, but given the fact that it had a $171 million production budget, it's not nearly as great. So I think people are going to take a wait-and-see attitude with The Lion King, even though I think The Lion King is going to be a better movie than Dumbo or even Beauty and the Beast.
But The Lion King is in such a higher echelon of like nostalgia than Dumbo. Like that's a movie that people are far more enthusiastic about than any. The best remake of Dumbo in the world isn't going to have the same hype as The Lion King. But we're not here to talk about The Lion King.
Well, I also think that you guys are underestimating just how popular Frozen is. If there's a dark horse, I think that is the one. I think there's a distinct possibility that it's going to be Avengers Endgame, followed by Frozen, followed by Episode 9. If I were to make a bet, that would actually be my prediction for how the year shakes out. Brian, what do you think?
I'm sticking with that Lion King gimmick, man, because to me, like, it was so huge when I was 6 years old in 94, like, and then looking at the numbers now, and if you do, like, the math, well over $1.5 billion, like, in terms of today's numbers, right? So that audience is huge. Like, I don't know, it's going to be like so huge. I think it's going to be the highest grossing one of them all, even more than Star Wars. I think it just has this audience that just transcends generations. It's a movie that kids show their kids, or I mean, parents show their kids, and like it's just everyone connects with it, and especially with like a Beyonce in there to kind of like get that casual audience. And you
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover, yeah.
This is the first one of these.
Star of Solo.
Right.
True.
You got the original with James Earl Jones there. Like, there's a lot of things going for that movie.
This is the first one of the Disney remakes I've been sure I was going to go and see. So I think that may say something.
Endgame's going to go 2, I think, and then 3 is going to be Frozen 2. Because I think Frozen was such this huge hit that no one expected it. And even I'm a fan of the movie, and, to me, it's just the soundtrack that really makes it over the top. So I think that soundtrack really got over with a lot of people, and that has a big audience as well.
All right, let's go to Matt first on this one. Make a significant non-death or resurrection prediction. Why are you laughing?
Ben, are you going to make the one I think you are? Because I don't want to steal it from you.
Fine, go for it.
No, I'm not going to steal it for you. Okay, my bold prediction then, just to fuck over our list, because Brian made a prediction that contradicts his. My wild prediction, all of the original 6 Avengers will live, despite it being such a, will they all die? Which one of them will die? How many will die? I could see them coming out of this the other side, and they're all, maybe they're not active in duty, maybe they are retired or having children or whatever, but I could fully see them doing it, even though a year ago the whole narrative was, right, some of these original Avengers have got to go. This is going to be the last time we're going to see them. There you go. There's my wild one that will make us lose the picks if it is true.
And Ben, are you with Matt on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been coming around to it. I think Black Widow, with the movie coming out, I don't think that movie's going to be set in the past. I think Thor franchise has had a massive boost based on Thor Ragnarok, that they'd be dumb to kind of not kill him off. I think Hulk's still got the story left to tell. And then it comes to Iron Man and Cap. So Iron Man, I think if he gets a kid, I think he retires and just kind of maintains this kind of elder statesman role where he just pops up every so often and Disney chuck 50 million at him to just kind of show up for 2 days on set. But my actual prediction is I think Cap retires, but if this movie is going to be all time travel, I think Cap retires to the 1940s and actually gets to have his dance with Peggy.
Oh. Yeah, I don't want to steal that, but I back that 100%.
All right, so I know that Brian has a prediction, and I totally agree with it. But what I want to do is I'm going to predict that Valkyrie, who has a poster for the Avengers Fallen, she will play an important role in the final battle against Thanos in whatever form that takes, whether it's time travel. I don't know if she's necessarily going to time travel, but I believe that Valkyrie is going to be an important part because I think whatever Phase 4 turns out to be, I think Valkyrie is going to be such an important part. And quite frankly, I think she's going to get her own movie. And
so
that is my prediction. That is my prediction that Valkyrie plays an important role in the final part of this movie. Brian, I'm glad we're ending with you and not starting with you because this is something that you've been on for years.
Okay, so we talked about the scrolls, yes. Another thing that, Tony mentions a wedding. You don't just tease something like that, right? So I think the scene that everyone's been talking about where all the heroes are in the same shot that they've been kind of building up. They didn't do it last year. So I think we're going to get all the heroes showing up for Tony's wedding. He even says to Wong, you're coming to my wedding. You can't just drop a line like that, right? So I think that's it. And it's either going to be that and then it's going to be a wedding and a funeral for Cap or something like that. You know what I mean? Mourning and then joy, and then you have this big moment at the end where it's Return of the Jedi.
All right, so I wanted to go a little bit different for this next question because we really haven't talked about the DCEU. There's very little context for us talking about it otherwise, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this one. Brian, has the DCEU made any gains on the MCU in these last 2 years after the success of Wonder Woman and Aquaman, plus the expected box office success of Shazam?
Creatively, yeah. There's nothing but good buzz coming out of Shazam. I didn't get the chance to see the screening, but from what I've heard, they knocked that script out of the park in terms of the dialogue and the humor and all that thing. So I'm really excited for that. Aquaman was great. Wonder Woman 2 years ago was great. I just feel like the DCU gets a lot of shit, but the last couple movies have been really kind of hits for them. Or at least, Shazam sounds like it's going to be a hit. Aquaman is obviously a huge hit. They're making some gains, and I feel like they kind of figured out more how to do a better origin story movie than maybe some of the MCU movies in terms of their origin story. So I think they kind of got some gains on there and kind of going with a different direction and doing the visual style like they did with Aquaman and kind of just making each individual movie its own. So I think in terms of that, the creativity wise, they have a slight edge in terms of their solo movies.
Right, I think from a creativity and a visual standpoint, I think that's the thing that where people were blown away by Aquaman was just how visually distinct it was from so many of the Marvel movies. Ben, you and I are the only ones who have seen Shazam, I believe. What are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I think they've come leaps and bounds since Wonder Woman. I don't think you can understate how important it was to get Zack Snyder out of that room and have his creative vision be the one that was dictating what they were doing. I heard a story from a friend where they were an extra on set, and apparently Joss Whedon handed them a sign that just said "I tried," and it was apparently Joss Whedon's message to the fans who watched Justice League that he tried his best to salvage it. But yeah, like Wonder Woman was great, and I think the action in Aquaman was good. Like, I'm not sure the rest of the movie kind of held together in the way that some of the MCU movies did. Shazam is the most successful movie they've done since Wonder Woman, and they are visually more interesting. They're doing more experimental stuff with the comics. Like, there is comic stuff in Shazam that I genuinely did not think I would be put to screen, which, like, that probably only speaks to the comic going market, but I just think they're making bold moves and they're making interesting creative decisions, because even beyond this, like, we have Joker coming out later on this year, which could be a like dude bro dark movie with Joker being like hurting women and stuff like that would be awful. But the fact that they're trying to do something like that says that they are actually experimenting, and at the moment they're kind of hitting more than they're missing, which is good.
Their boldest move is perhaps releasing a Christmas movie in the month of April. And Matt, what do you think of this?
I can't say they haven't made any gains. Like, of course they have, but I don't think they're significant yet. But I think their future is really nicely set up. I think every one of the movies they've got coming in that have been announced anyway, they sound interesting. Like, that little sizzle reel for the Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey movie, that looks really cool and stylish. Like, I haven't seen Shazam yet. I hear it's great. That immediately looked very different than anything they've done before. So yeah, I think going forward they've got some cool stuff happening. But I think Wonder Woman's only okay. I didn't think Aquaman was amazing. I think that made a lot of money because Jason Momoa is a very attractive human being. I think that had a lot of problems going on in it. That trench moment where he dives in, that was cool as fuck. So they do, as you say, they have some very stylish stuff happening, but they always had stylish stuff happening. For as bad of a movie as Batman vs Superman is, there's some really good visual stuff in there, but that's what Snyder did. So they're getting better, because let's not forget, after Wonder Woman, we did still have Suicide Squad and we did still have Justice League. But, I mean, a lot of that is Snyder's influence, and that interview he gave the other day, woof. But yeah, I think going forward, they've got some cool stuff going on, and I think, you know, Marvel coming to this sort of natural sort of dip maybe after this, or maybe a slight pause. DC have a real chance here to fill a void, and I think they're doing a smart thing by abandoning this shared universe and just doing fun and very different movies, you know, like not going out of their way to make them connect. Just, here's a stylish little thing we made, and do a few of those, and then maybe try a crossover again out down the line. But I think the future is bright for them. But I wouldn't say, like, you know, they're coming for Marvel's lunch money or anything like that.
I think it is worth pointing out just how much Aquaman owned the Christmas holiday over any other movie. And even if that movie was not the greatest, it was a clear signal that if you release a big budget movie at Christmas time and people enjoy it and can engage with it, I mean, that just shows that Star Wars needs to go back to Christmas and just stay there for now and the rest of time. I think that's what the lesson of Aquaman basically is. All right, let's go back to the MCU. So this is a very interesting question that doesn't really have anything to do with the movies, but it's more kind of an abstract question. Which actor has benefited the most from the MCU? Ben, I don't know what your criteria is, but I'm hoping we get 4 different answers here.
So I sent Matt the joke answer and said none of them, because they've all been tied into these contracts for God knows how long, and they haven't actually had the chance to make money movies outside of this. Like, Zoe Saldana obviously got to go away and make Avatar, but they haven't even fucking come out yet, so who knows if they're actually going to be any good. But thinking on it, I think there is one actor who's actually benefited from this quite a lot, and that's Chris Pratt. I don't think anyone has had the opportunity to star in as many big budget movies as he has, because I mean, like, Lego Movie came out at the same time as Guardians of the Galaxy, but since then he's had Jurassic World, he's had a Magnificent Seven, Passengers. Like, he is a star now, and I do think, like, I don't think we can say Parks and Recreation made him a star. It definitely was that 1-2 punch of Lego Movie and Guardians of the Galaxy, and more significantly Guardians of the Galaxy, that have made him that.
Had he booked Jurassic World before Guardians existed?
I don't think he had.
Because I think that would have still done it for him, but I think Guardians certainly did turn a lot of people around on how they thought about this dude, and, like, he's definitely an A-lister now.
So, Matt, are you in agreement that it's Chris Pratt?
I think it's Robert Downey Jr., because he's made significantly more money than anyone else in this without really being in a big film other than these. Like, he's had a lot of little bit parts, like him showing up in Chef is a trip because he's friends with Favreau. He is an enormous star, and how many other movies is he even in? And all these other
Matt,
people...
dare you forget about the judge?
I forgot about the judge, literally, because there's a copy sitting on my DVD shelf, still wrapped in its plastic, that I haven't watched, so I literally forgot about the judge. Yeah, he's made so much more money than everyone else. Everyone else is either on, like, a smaller contract than they have any right to be on, or the few people that have still made big movies outside of the MCU, I think they probably would have anyway, like your Scarlett Johanssons, your Chris Hemsworths. Like, everyone's really enthusiastic about Chris Evans, but what other huge movies has he really been in? Like, he's done some well-reviewed smaller things, but yeah, I think Downey, because of... I know he was turning it around before Iron Man, but the narrative is Iron Man saved his career, but, like, all the money... He's the biggest moneymaker out there, and, like... It's all thanks to Marvel.
It's very interesting that you pointed out Chris Evans, because that is actually going to be my answer, because if you're looking from a purely financial standpoint, I think Robert Downey Jr. is really the only answer. But when you look at where Chris Evans' career was before Captain America, the First Avenger, he was basically known as the guy who was in Not Another Teen Movie and the guy who was making fun of himself in Scott Pilgrim.
What a role.
I mean, he was making fun of himself before he was really famous, which is a pretty self-aware move on his part. But, I mean, for me, I think Chris Evans is somebody who has really benefited from the MCU. I think the perception is that he is a movie star, and because of these movies, you know, he has not been in a lot of other blockbusters, but he has felt very comfortable doing smaller movies and perhaps even considering becoming a director. And I think a lot of that clout comes from being a part of the MCU. So maybe his bank account isn't as big as Robert Downey Jr.'s, but I think that what he wants is he wants the freedom to be able to do whatever he wants. And plus, he's also a really good dude. I think that's also a part of it for me as well. The fact that not only is he Captain America in the movies, but he's kind of embraced being Captain America in real life too, and for me that matters. So, Matt, I hear you swooning over there.
The best of the Chris's.
I think he is the best of the Chris's, yes.
Yes,
So
just a shout out to Snowpiercer, which is probably the best movie that any MCU actor has made whilst they've been in the superhero movies, and the fact that he's going to be in Rian Johnson's new movie as well. Which, again, that's the most exciting project I see coming from someone post-MCU or post their time with the MCU.
Absolutely. I think Chris Evans is my pick. So, Brian?
The first name that came into my head was Chris Hemsworth. Like, he went from essentially being nobody to being, like, one of the top stars in the world. Like, he's going into Men in Black, and because of the MCU, he got that opportunity to do Ghostbusters, and despite how you feel about Ghostbusters, he was, like, the highlight of the movie in terms of the comedy for me, and everyone got to see that comedy side before Ragnarok came out. And then once Ragnarok came out, you realize he's this great comedy actor, too, that can really tap into that. And that's when he got the gig for Men in Black, I think. Plus, you know, Tessa Thompson with that chemistry. So he went from nothing, or not necessarily nothing. He was known as Captain Kirk's dad that died in Star Trek in 2009. And then, you know, once Thor came out, he became this household name. Out of the original Avengers, I felt he was the least known. And now everyone in the world knows him as Thor. So for him to go from nothing to being one, you know, to going from franchise to franchise, I think he benefited the most. Even though it's not just about money, I think him going from nothing speaks for itself.
I just love that the three Chris's were all picked.
Yeah.
Although I am sad we didn't pick a single female actress.
I was going to say, that's very telling, and I think this will tie into a question we're going to get in a minute.
Right, I think that is a significant issue, but I think in a few years, I think we might be able to maybe mention Letitia Wright and some of the folks from Black Panther. I think there is a distinct possibility that this answer could change. But let's talk about this. What is one aspect of the MCU that you want to see improved upon or changed in the next year, besides the fact that X-Men and Fantastic Four are being added? Matt, I'm going to go to you first.
I feel there's no other answer to this, so we may just get three of the same, but representation. We need queer characters immediately. We need more non-white characters in prominent positions immediately. For as much as they may want to claim that they're inclusive, like, it is a lot of white dudes, you know, and like, I think we need characters like Kamala Khan and America Chavez and these characters that are not just a straight white dude. And I think that change is gradually coming, you know, like Captain Marvel was huge, and that's, I know I'm mostly talking about sexuality and race here, but women as well need a better treatment from Marvel. You know, the first female-led movie, it was a and the Wasp. So I think we need all these addressed immediately. And knowing that Captain Marvel and Black Panther are probably going to be the two biggest superheroes for Marvel going forward, that's great. But a lot more of this, please, immediately.
Right, and I'm going to have a different answer just to be different, but I just want to second everything that Matt just said. We need more Latinx characters. We need Muslim characters. We need all of that on screen, and my hope is that this is something that is being led to, and Asians and Asian superheroes as well, because I think there's been some co-opting that has gone on with Doctor Strange and even on Netflix with Iron Fist. So yes, they definitely need more inclusion and representation on screen. So I'm going to have a different answer, but I'm going to go to Brian first. Do you have a different answer, or are you going to second Matt as well?
Yeah, I kind of second Matt. It's just I really want more strong female characters that we got in Black Panther. Like, that was so refreshing, and you got that in Captain Marvel as well. So I want more of that, and I'm just kind of tired of like seeing like these dudes kind of make all these decisions and everyone kind of following them. And you look at Black Panther, and the smartest characters on the screen were probably the women, and some of the most badass characters were the women. So I think there's a lot of things you can do with that, and I'm hoping they might even do that teased female team up movie if they wanted to, with the Black Widow, with Okoye and Letitia Wright, and all those, just put them all together. Maybe even, well, I don't know. There's rumors that Letitia may even become the next Black Panther in like 10 years or so. So we'll see. But I think the changes are coming, but in a good way.
And Ben?
I mean, obviously, diversity and different races and stuff like that is so important. And I'm going to kind of tie it into something else. Is that we know that coming up, we've got stuff like the Eternals, which they've said will have a gay actor in the lead, and we've got Shang-Chi, which will be featuring an Asian or an Asian American in the lead role. And all of the movies they've got coming up are being directed by women, or in the case of Shang-Chi is being directed by someone of Asian descent or someone of Polynesian descent. So they're getting better in that way. But you look at the list of directors they've got coming up in Kate Shortland, Chloe Zhao, and Destin Daniel Cretton, and they're all from independent film backgrounds, which aren't particularly flashy when it comes to directing movies. And I think that's what I want to see change. Is I want more visual risks to be taken with these movies. The fact that probably the most interesting visual director that they've had in the MCU was Edgar Wright, and he left the movie a few months before it happened. And whilst they've made small strides in this, it still feels that they've tapped down on like what the visual style of these movies are. And I think I know that Jerome's watched Patrick Willem's video on what the MCU needs to change, and I do think that like it's that visual flatness and the fact that the Russo brothers, whilst they are amazing at managing to get all those characters together and making this movie work, it's just not interesting to look at whilst the cool stuff, the banter and the action is happening at the same time.
Right, and I cannot get those videos out of my head because I really love the MCU. I really love some of the movies that they've done, but that is one of the biggest things that I want to see. Is I want to see more visual risk taking as well, because these movies are guaranteed to make $1 billion almost at this point. There is no reason that every movie has to look exactly the same. There has to be a better job done. And I can almost understand Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame having some of that, just because you're trying to do so much. But especially for these individual movies, like I did enjoy Captain Marvel, but that movie, it kind of fell flat for me from a visual standpoint. And I think part of it is because of the directors. And I certainly understand why they went with the directors that they did and why they're going with a lot of indie directors. But I think you need to give them more freedom. I think having more representation behind the camera is important. It's not just about the directors to me, but it's also about having people do the score and the screenwriting as well. I think you need representation across the board in the MCU, and that will lead to taking more risks in front of and behind the camera. All right, let's get to the last question before we call it a day. Prior to the Fox acquisitions, how enthusiastic would you be about the currently announced Phase 4, which includes Black Widow, The Eternals, Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange 2, Guardians 3, and Black Panther 2? I believe it is Brian's turn.
I'm worried about The Eternals, to be honest. I feel like that movie might not connect with people, like going so back in the history of the MCU to the origins of the universe. it might be a little too much for people to comprehend and just care about. It's just a bunch of random people that might not have any significance to the current timeline. So that's kind of my worry about the Eternals, because I was kind of worried about that when they announced the Humans and they just brought it in the show, and yeah, we saw how that turned out. So I'm kind of worried about that. But I'm all for Black Widow. Shang-Chi should be good. Doctor Strange 2 should be good. Guardians 3, Black Panther 2, all of those should be good. Just the Eternals seems a little too much, and I'm worried that they're gonna go a little too weird with it, because it's gonna be kind of hard to connect with for audiences, I think.
And Ben?
Yeah, I think my two big question marks are the Eternals and Shang-Chi, and not because I don't think they can make interesting stories out of them. I think the fact that Feige was never intent on doing Inhumans because of the Marvel Comics side pushing to get that in whilst they lost the X-Men film rights, I think he was right to dump that, because I don't think they could have done a good Inhumans movie if they were being forced to do it. But the Eternals is obviously something that they are pushing to do themselves. And then Shang-Chi is, a problematic character in terms of it being 70s pulp in the same way that Luke Cage in Iron Fist is. In the comics, his dad is literally Fu Manchu, which... I don't think they're going to do that in the movie.
No.
I just think, of all the characters they could have chosen from, whilst I'm sure they've got good ideas and good pitches to do, the fact that we're not getting stuff like Young Avengers, the fact that we're not getting Kamala Khan, the fact that we're not getting She-Hulk, the fact there are a lot of characters that I feel are more prominent, that probably are more fertile ground for stories. It just says to me that I don't know if they're getting the end of their tether in terms of what they want to adapt, or whether or not they're going to start taking more of these big risks. Because, Guardians, when that came out, was a massive risk. But the thing is, it was still coming off the back of a very well-regarded comic run, which was fertile ground for them to kind of, base a story around. And I don't feel like the same is true of the Eternals. I don't feel it's the same is true of Shang-Chi, even if, at this point, there will be a base level of quality to the movies that I don't think Marvel can really fuck up at this point, because there hasn't been a bad movie now since 2013, really.
All right, and Matt, what are your thoughts on Phase 4?
Yeah, I think it lacks a bit of oomph. I know you've got a Black Panther 2 on the board and you've got a Guardians 3 up there, but there's just something a bit... I don't know. I think because Eternals and Shang-Chi are such blank canvases, there's not any real reverence for the Shang-Chi character in comics, and I only barely know who the Eternals are as well, but I trust Marvel at this point. Like Ben was saying, they haven't done a bad movie in a while, and I honestly think they're at a point they could make up a character of their own and have it make almost $1 billion as a movie, just because of how efficiently that machine works. And maybe a blank canvas is a good thing. Guardians was kind of a blank canvas. I know that they did closely follow that run that was so well regarded, but they kind of could have done anything they wanted, and they did make some changes from the comic source material. I don't think they need to be indebted to it. It is a wonderful starting point, and it saves you some time creatively, but I think they are going to miss... If some of these original Avengers do retire or die, I think they are going to miss them, and we'll have to see how Phase 4 shakes out. But I think getting those Fox things will help. But before that, maybe they were lacking something here. But yeah, we'll see how it all plays out.
Right. At this point, I think when you have done 22 movies and they have all been successes, and basically everything that they turn out at this point is almost guaranteed to make $1 billion, I think that speaks a lot to the trust that they should have. And I want them to take risks. I don't know what the Eternals is going to be. I don't know what Shang-Chi is going to be at this point. But to me, I would rather do this than do an Iron Man 4 or even a Captain America 4. I want to see some new directions for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the other thing that we did not consider as part of this is Disney Plus is going to have some impact on what the MCU does moving forward, because it is not Jeff Loeb who is in charge of Marvel Television that is in charge of the programming on Disney Plus. But we are going to get a number of MCU-related shows, and we are also going to get some things that are a little bit outside the realm, such as the What If series. So I also think that is also going to play some sort of role. I don't know how important a Bucky and Falcon show is going to be to the greater story, but I think there is going to be some impact there, and Marvel is going to have a new way to tell their stories.
Well, I think if you're potentially having Captain America die or retire, those two are the two most prominent people to be called Captain America besides Steve Rogers. I think a series where they're sort of sort of friendly rivals trying to pick up that shield, that could be huge, and one of them could be called Captain America the next time we see them in a movie.
I think it's interesting that the initial MCU plan offered up a whole load of characters as collateral, and Shang-Chi is one of the last characters on that list that has yet to be adapted. Because they've already done Captain America, the Avengers, Nick Fury, Black Panther, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, and Hawkeye. Cloak and Dagger's been done on TV. So Shang-Chi was one of the last characters they had on that list of collateral they put up when they started this crazy plan. So we might see Power Pack coming soon. I'm sure Matt's excited.
Oh yeah, it's interesting they had Shang-Chi on there. I guess that is looking towards the Asian market and being sort of business savvy. But yeah, that's definitely the odd one out of that list.
Yeah.
All right, so we are officially done previewing Avengers Endgame. I know that Matt, Ben, Brian, and I, we're exhausted just talking about this for 2 hours, but we're going to get to a couple plugs here. So for the month of April, Superhero Pantheon, it's going to be Brian and myself. We have already done our Avengers Infinity War Pantheon review, which you could go check out. The rest of this month, there are 2 other superhero movies that are also coming out in the month of April because people are nuts. Shazam and Hellboy will be reviewed the rest of this month. And, of course, we are ending the month of April with our review of Avengers Endgame. We are going to do it very similar to the format that we did last year, where we drafted our best moments and we drafted our own team of Avengers. So that is what is going on our end. Matt, why don't you handle the plugs on your side for what you're going to be doing?
Sure. Well, at entertherealworld.com, I currently have a Game of Thrones podcast going with Mike Thomas called The Wheel Breakers. That is every Thursday, Thrones Thursdays kind of thing. I didn't want to do Westeros Wednesdays because me and Ben do Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey on Wednesdays, and that is coming back very soon. We'll have episodes on Ant-Man and the Wasp, have episodes on Captain Marvel, and then, of course, Endgame. Go to the site and hopefully more interesting stuff coming soon. SoundCloud.com/Mike and Matt. We're on Spotify. We're everywhere. You name a place that you want us to be, we'll find a way to get there.
I think it's ridiculous that apparently a full battle episode of Game of Thrones is happening the same weekend that Avengers Infinity War opens.
I mean, the MCU ends, Game of Thrones ends, and Star Wars ends in 1 year. Like, that's...
Well, we have a website next year.
We will have a website. We will hopefully be continuing to do superhero reviews. But for Ben, Matt, Brian, and myself, thank you so much for listening to our crossover. We will talk to you again very soon.
Bye.
Farewell.
Brian, do you have anything funny to say?
I'm a scroll?